Hey, welcome back to another podcast. This is not a car wash. Today we have two very special guests. Of course, you know, Kevin and Jason. This has been a long time coming. I'm not even going to waste any time. Let me pull everybody in. There you are, looking good. Ooh, Puerto Rico hat, PR. That's what that stands for. Yes, Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico, yeah.
How was your trip?
My trip to Puerto Rico?
Yeah,
Oh, it was a couple of years ago, but it was fine.
I
Yeah, I
thought you
used to
just
live
went to
there
Puerto
for 4
Rico.
years. I don't know if you knew that, but I lived there when I was a child. I lived there for 4 years.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I thought you just went to Puerto Rico.
No, I went to Costa Rica.
Costa Rica. Sorry, I knew it was.
Yeah.
I knew it was somewhere warmer than I am right now. Kevin, what's going on, man?
Same old thing. Waiting on you two for an hour.
Yeah. Right. So the backstory here, our dear friend Kevin is trying to get some headphones that wasn't working, and so if he sounds like the options were sounding like a tin can, or Jason and I believe that he was in an F-15 pulling 6 Gs.
Jeez, yeah.
It's like, we're about 32,000 feet and coming down to, I was like, whoa, okay. So
Houston, we have a problem. Houston, we have a problem.
it was really like that.
Yeah,
Anyhow.
Problems in Connecticut and Colorado.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's good to have you back. I don't think the last time we did a group podcast, I mean, that was a long time ago. I can't remember.
When was that? Was it at SEMA before COVID?
I think it was SEMA. Remember we did one on stage at the MagnaFlow booth?
It's been a long time.
Yeah, I think that was the last time we did one. But whatever. It's somewhere posted on the website. That is probably 3 or 4 years ago. How long you been at Rupes?
8 years.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I was going to say I didn't know if it was like, McGuire's time or... We've definitely done one since then.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyways.
We've done 2
So-
since then.
Yeah, I have, for people who can see the video right now, I'm holding up, but for those of you listening, I'm holding up a piece of paper. You hear that piece of paper? That's the sound of me holding a piece of paper. There's a ton of questions, and my throat is all messed up because while we were waiting for Jason, waiting for Kevin, Jason and I were making horrible remarks to him because he couldn't hear anything, and him and I were the only ones that were listening to it, and I started to cough.
So we're laughing our ass off.
So I'm coughing my brains out right now because I was laughing so hard that I choked on my water. So that's the backstory as to why I sound horrible. So we can all thank Kevin for his microphone not working or whatever it was not working. So today I've gathered you all here to talk about a couple of things. We're doing our masterclass and why I named it horribly the masterclass. We'll talk about that. Kevin, you weren't listening. Jason and I were realizing that I shouldn't have named it masterclass because half the questions I have are, I'm not a master. Can I still come to this class? And I was like, oh, knucklehead. I should have named it that way. But Jason's like, yeah, that's why we don't name it anymore. I was like, thanks, bud. Thanks for the heads up on the, on the tip there. So we're going to answer a lot of questions later on. Talk about what we're going to be doing in it, why it's so unique and special, and so on and so forth. But before we get into all that, I did want to, we're still going backwards in time in terms of, I've shot a lot of, what is this, shot? Or how do you, I guess I'm shooting one right now, but I'm recording. That's what I'm recording a podcast. We've recorded a lot of podcasts about very specific topics, but I kind of wanted to go backwards a little bit because we're going to start this whole thing over again in terms of, this new age of podcasting and so on and so forth. So my question to both of you is, when was the first time you actually physically met each other? Or did you email each other? Because I met Jason first through email. Did you guys meet in person, or was email even, were you guys still doing bricks and
Actually,
stones?
more accurately, Larry, I ignored your email for quite a long time.
Yes, you did.
Before we actually talked via email.
That's true. The thing is, I didn't know that till now because I didn't know that you ignored it, you big jerk. But thank you.
But when we finally started talking on email, I was like, Larry, who?
Yeah. Such a jerk. We did meet at SEMA. I had Eileen with me. I had the power.
Yeah, that was our.
Remember that side room on the top floor in the back there?
I do remember that meeting very well.
Yeah.
But as far as Kevin and I, wasn't it it was at a paint supply store open house, wasn't it?
Yep. I was driving down the street and I saw your McGuire's pop-up tent, and I pulled in there, and we started chatting about me wanting to do videos and to eventually become a dealer and sell at the West Coast Nationals. And you told me that McGuire's wasn't attending that year. If I was serious, you could help make it happen. And that's what happened.
What do you mean you wanted to shoot videos?
What's that?
What do you mean you wanted to shoot videos? What are you talking about?
Mm-hmm. I have a video on a videotape from many years before I met you.
I only saw the first one I ever saw of you was you working on the close your ears real quick, Jason, on the washer with what was that? Was it with Jason? Richard Lynn. I love him. Yeah. He's awesome. I love his wife. Him. He's great.
Yeah. Well, I had one that I had done when I was had a full head of hair and zest for life, you know, and hired a guy to come out and just kind of see what it would look like on video, and that was as far as it went.
My favorite part of that last little thing that you did, you said zest for life, but which was like, okay, fine, but you went like this, and zest for life.
I know, I did that on purpose. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Those of you listening to the podcast, you need to watch what's going on now. What? A VHS?
It was on a VHS tape.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Well, it might even be on the good one, the beta.
Ooh.
The beta, wow.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Wait a second, does that still exist?
If it does, I would never find it for you.
And then, yeah, thanks. I promise. I'll just share it with just a few of my friends on Facebook or whatever.
Oh, great.
So what was it? You demonstrating something, or you just like, hey,
I just was washing a car, so I was planning to do a full A to Z how to detail. This was all new. I mean, I was still buying detailing books, and so the idea of having a video to show how to wash cars and such, that was a fairly new idea. I don't know if anybody even had one out yet, but it didn't go anywhere, obviously.
What year is this? This is pre-YouTube?
Probably 1992 or 3.
Oh, all right. So I was like 10. That's cool. Anyways, just like to do that to you guys because you're my boys. So you guys first met at a paint booth or whatever, like a paint store?
Paint store.
And so McGuire's was supplying like one of the racks was McGuire's or whatever in this paint store. And you're talking paint stores in like, I want to paint my walls or like paint my car?
It's automotive paint supply.
Automotive paint supply. Got it. And then from there, you want
to... They had this open house, and it was spilling out of the store, and we were in the parking lot. We had booths set up and all that. So I remember that event. And then, so Kevin, what you're saying is we immediately jumped into the McGuire's sales at the West Coast Nationals in Pleasanton, California.
Is that the one where you had like the crazy huge tent you were telling me about? And there was like, thousands of people coming by, and is that the one? Maybe you told me one story about that. Tell me again what happened in there. Like you were doing like the most, remember you said you did like the most sales of anything, something about that, right?
Well, so what I remember is Kevin had kind of a different idea about how to sell wax at a car show. So he wanted to do a much better presentation and much more experiential. So people that came into the booth, they got an experience. It wasn't just talking to somebody about car wax.
Yeah, but was it like hands-on at that point or not?
Oh, yeah.
So that was revolutionary back then, where normally like you'd get like the ShamWow guy going up and like, we can do this and we can do that. And everyone's like standing in a circle. So you pulled them in and like literally gave them a can of wax?
Well, no. So for example, I forget how many different demo stations you had, Kevin, but if you wanted to sell car wash soap, he had a trough and he had, a panel, and you could actually experience the car wash soap, the suds and the smell and the feel. And then tire dressing, he had a tire demo station. You can actually put tire dressing on a tire.
That's cool.
There was painted panels to apply wax. I mean,
we don't even do that now at SEMA.
Experiential thing.
I mean, I think Rupes does the, you can polish the one, the one or two hoods or sand or whatever. That's about as close as it gets, I think, at SEMA, if I remember correctly. Right? You can't like wax a car at SEMA, can you? I don't think so.
I think I think you can experience waxing at SEMA, but the point is, imagine a car show. So this is a big car show event. Lots of car enthusiasts and regular consumers walking around. But I was blown away by Kevin's presentation at this very first year we did this. I was blown away because I had never seen that kind of thing happen at a car show. And there was like lines of people with their arms full of products and tools. They're like waiting to pay for all this stuff. I had never seen that at a car show.
And so what happened from there? So you killed it. They were like, oh, we have to do this on a regular basis. And then at what point do you become a Meguiar's reseller or distributor or like whatever, like soon thereafter? Or were you working for Meguiar's at that point, Kevin?
Me?
Yeah.
I became that was my first show. The first show that we did, it was 1996, and actually I think Jason wasn't there that time, so we had Jeff Brown, who was the Northern California rep, who works for Griot's now, and we did that first show because Jason had something already planned. 1996 August, maybe it rings a bell, I don't know, but anyway, we did that first show, and one of the things that we did, I realized right away for the second year, was to remove all of my banners. That my name at the time of my detail company was Auto Perfect, and
I didn't know that.
We put up all Meguiar's banners. So I learned pretty quickly to associate with that name, which bumped the sales up the next year about 25%.
And so what were you doing before then? Like, so before you met Jason, you were just detailing cars, and you just randomly met him in this paint thing that you talked about before.
I used to see his van drive around my town and meet the Meguiar's guy, and I never could. But finally, I was going down the road, and I looked over to the right at the auto body supply, and there was Jason under a tent. So I pulled in there, and we got to talking right away. Mm-hmm. And like I said, we talked about maybe me becoming a dealer, and specifically to attend that event that Meguiar's normally would be attending, but probably had a conflict of another show, so they weren't going to be there with their 18-wheeler. So I managed to scrounge up the money from borrowing it to buy Easy Up tents and a buy-in of Meguiar's and a few other things, and attended that show. And that show was very new at that, but as we talked about in the last podcast, I have a background in retail, so I made it. Initially, the first year, I didn't do it the way we consequently did it in the following years, Jason and I and my crew of people or friends. But even so, that first year doubled the sales of the previous year.
Because of that technique.
Yeah, and then after the second year went up 25%, and the third year went up. Actually, we from the first year to the seventh year, we had already got up 100% over the first year. So it became an 1,800 square foot tent city of Meguiar's. And I had a booth. It was hot. It was a hot show. Car show was hot. You know, it was 100 degrees up there, and we're all on the blacktop. So I even put up an Easy Up tent that was just loaded with fans and misting water and 50s music, rock and roll music. So even if you weren't interested in what was in the booth, when you saw the cool zone, you would go in there and just cool off, and it was like a party in that place alone. And then I learned right away that if it's too quiet, just turn on a machine. It's like it's
like a dog whistle.
The old Indian head, and they're going to come look at like what's coming on the TV set.
Yeah.
So we would just make noise with polishers, and we'd go out and greet people. I think we had a staff of about 12 or 14. And it was just an all-day event of excitement in that booth. At least I felt that it was. It was certainly the most exciting automotive-based tent I'd ever been to in any car show. So we just made it exciting to be in there, and very friendly.
And then after years of that, like when did you transition to the website?
That lasted about 9 years. I would do that every year. It was once a year. It was the biggest show on the West Coast. I mean, it was such a big show that
big.
Where was it though?
They have to cap the year of car, like
in Irvine.
For many years, it was 1954 and older, because if they allowed anything newer, 55s, 56, 57s, it probably had another 1,000 cars, but they were maxed out. So it was a very high end good guys event, and it's still it still goes on yearly now, but it's changed quite a bit. I think we hit the peak. I think we were at the crescendo of, wow, this is the best show on the West Coast with the best cars, and
Yeah.
overall, it was a lot of fun.
And where was that? Irvine or like LA?
Pleasanton, California.
Where is that? Like north of LA?
Northern California.
The Mecca. That fairgrounds has hosted so many superb car shows. It's nationwide known.
And then the rest is history. You two guys just have been holding hands ever since. That's awesome.
I learned a lot doing those shows with Jason, and of course we worked together throughout the year. We did a couple other events, and we did our very first training event. I think it was 2004. We did the first
NXT. Did I go to that first one? Because I went to one.
No, this one was done in Oxnard. It was a 20 students. I didn't know how to do that, so I had to defer to Jason, and I think he was pretty new at doing training events as well, but not as new, because you used to travel and do training events for your distributors.
Yeah.
But McGuire's didn't have that garage at that point, right? In Irvine?
Yeah. They had, but it was literally a garage.
But not like the one that I saw when I finally went there in 2000 and whatever it was, 12.
Yeah.
Where it was like, it was like that back room with the laundry things, and then like the
desk. That was converted to a training center. I don't know what year. But I do remember the first NXT that Kevin and I did at that Oxnard facility. It was somebody's private collection, right?
Yeah, Otis Chandler Vintage Museum.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Otis Chandler's collection.
Of the LA Times, yeah. And just a note, prior to the garage, McGuire's would travel the country for quite a while with their 18-wheeler and do training events in that. And I think it transitioned into selling events at car shows. But yeah.
How many NXT events did you do in total?
Oh, that's a good question. 2, 4.
So 4?
Probably 8. Yeah.
8 in total over 8 years, or
8?
2004, 2012, 2014, 2015, East Coast and West Coast, and 2007.
Oh, the East Coast.
Yeah. Yeah, there was quite a few. I mean, we got it figured out pretty well. We would cap it off at 20 students per class, and we did a system where you could come to the first day, but you could not attend the second day, which was the advanced, unless you went through the first day. So, we learned a lot every year because we hadn't done very many of them. But since that time, I'm certain that the training that Jason puts on now far surpasses that in efficiency and just teaching at a high level in a quick manner. I'm sure that it's been dialed in. So.
Yeah,
it's much more streamlined now. But at the time, NXT was like, that was the bar raised very high. Mm-hmm. On the quality and the experience of a training event. It was the best of the best at that time.
And now a couple of weeks ago, as we were putting together, like today, we're going to talk a little bit about, my quote unquote, the master class that we're putting together, which, obviously, hindsight, it's confusing some people, so we're going to answer some questions about the masterclass aspect of it. But something that you and I talked about was the idea that you're putting on, I can't remember the exact word you said, like eating at a cafeteria versus hands-on versus like a discussion. So like, tell me a little bit about the difference between when you go train for Rupes and you have 100 people, what's that like versus when you have 30 people or whatever the scenario is. You get where I'm going with that? I can't remember the exact words that you used.
Well, to use words that, most of your listeners would resonate with. So there's a style of educating, and one of the styles is a presentation format where it's presenting information to a larger audience. And then there's what's called a workshop, and that's where people actually get hands-on. So there could be some education in the form of a presentation, but then everybody puts products in their hands and they're using them themselves. So those are the two major styles. It's either a presentation, somebody sits there and listens to somebody talk, or they might visually see a demonstration. That's presentation style.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other is more of a workshop where you jump in there and work with your hands.
And most of the stuff that you do is which one?
I do both. So around the world, when I travel, I do a lot of presentation style because the audiences tend to be much bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And the bigger the audience is, the more challenge there are logistically for hands-on training. As you can imagine, 100 or more people. It's how do you get something in there, each one of those 100 people's hands to work with something. So when I travel internationally, there tends to be a lot of large audience presentation style education. And I also do the smaller group workshops. But in my academy and in our academy in Italy, we do both. We actually do both styles, presentation and workshops.
Got it. Well, further, what we're going to be doing is more geared towards the hands-on training aspect versus the presentation when we do that at Rupes.
Yeah. Which is why you've decided to limit the size. So we want it to be more intimate, and we want people to actually get real hands-on education. So that's the style of your event. And you're also doing presentations. Because you're adding topics that are not just on the paint. Right, you're adding your other business and marketing and things like that.
Yeah, profit and losses, and how to actually make this a profitable business as opposed to pure passion based versus actually running a CEO and all these kinds of things. So I'm gonna go in depth in our questions in that, which we should probably do now. But I was dying to ask you two other questions before we got into that, just because I have both of you here. So we're gonna go and we're gonna answer those specific questions of what are we doing in the training, why is it different, so on and so forth. But man, that laughing before we got started absolutely killed my throat. I was dying.
That's what you get, making fun.
I'm making fun of you. I can't. Every 2 seconds, I'm like, and I was totally fine all day. But I did want to kind of go backwards and ask you this. I did preface this to you, Jason, while we were waiting for Kevin. Just because I caught the end of the rotary world when it transitions to the DA, right? So I probably have, 75% plus DA in my life, and 15 or 20 or whatever you want to call it of rotary. So rotary was just what it was in the beginning, and then all of a sudden this DA thing came out. I think it's actually quite opposite for you guys. Is it more like 50-50 or whatever, meaning you guys only had rotary, and then all of a sudden this DA thing came out, halfway through your career, middle of your career, end of your career? Like, what do you think? Like, you get the point I'm trying to make? So at some point, the DA came out, and I'm trying to go back to that moment to understand, for people who weren't there, what was the significance of that? Were you guys just like, whatever, this is a fad? Or were you like, oh my God, this is the world, this changes everything? Or, you get where I'm going?
Well, for me, Kevin, can I answer?
Sure, go ahead.
I started out with a mix of DA and rotary, but my detail business was in the era of major rotary work by detailers. It was really the only thing that detailers used, and body shops and collision repair. It was all rotary at the time. But then at some point in the early 90s, I would say, early to mid 90s, the 8mm DAs came out.
Like the Porter cable you're talking about?
Yeah. So at some point there was somebody who took a wood sander with an 8mm orbit size tool, and they put a pad on there and polished paint, and then that started the DA era. But for many years, and I would say decades, that dual action polishing era was dominated by 8mm tools. So there was a whole bunch of different brands of 8mm tools.
Yeah, but as a professional, were you like, this is a joke, this is like some sort of gimmick, this is Teflon kind of thing? You know what I mean? That mentality, we're like, whatever.
It worked. I mean, and Kevin and I were in that era where we were trying to take 8mm DA polishers and really pushing the envelope on performance. I mean, we got every little bit of performance that 8mm tool, and we had to lean in our upper body weight, and we had to really we tried our best to do sanding mark removal, deep scratch removal, moderate scratch removal, full car polishing. We did everything we could with these 8mm tools. And all the while, Kevin and I both, because we had many, many conversations, we're like, there's got to be a better way. This is first of all, it's a lot of work.
More than a rotary?
Oh, for sure.
So then why would you use it at that point? Was it just because it was that much easier?
Because it delivered some benefits over rotary, meaning it was safer on the paint. It did not leave a circular scratch like the rotary tool does.
Yeah.
So it delivered some benefits. But right around 2010-ish, that's when the large orbit thing came in, and Kevin knows this really well. He saw, the infamous SEMA text.
Yeah, so that's the other question I wanted to ask you as you're going into this. At this point, Kevin, you and Jason are trying to figure out the DA at the 8mm throw. You're still, it'd be fair to say, and correct that it doesn't matter, 50-50, you're still using rotary and DA, or now are you like 80% using the DA with an 8mm throw? Where are you in? I'm trying to understand.
Well, to preface what Jason said, there always were random orbitals that I would use, but they were the big ones, the slow RPM,
these guys,
monster stroke, wax koas, gems, and those kind with a big soft cushiony pad, and you use a terry cloth bonnet. That's what a DA represented to me, because I had one, and I did a lot of one-step cleaner waxes with those, but you had to, at the time, know how to utilize a rotary. Everything was built for it. The pad systems were rotary. The liquids.
Compounds.
Yeah. You couldn't get any true, real correction just because partly the massive foam backing of those gems and wax koas and the like, they just cushioned everything, So then when you had this transition at some point of, wow, I can use this Porter cable or this Meguiar's Brandon Porter cable and put the buffing pad on it, there still were buffing pads that were originally designed a certain diameter and height and cushioning for rotary, so they weren't efficient. You could absorb you could absorb a lot of the machine motion or negate it completely, depending on how tall the pad and pliable. Plus, if you had a compound that was grippy or sticky, that would cause a tremendous amount of friction between the face of the pad and the machine, so that stalls. So now you have no random rotation. Now it's almost stuck there momentarily, so literally the pad would absorb the 8mm orbit. You would just get buzzing. It was very frustrating. And even when you could get it to work initially, it just left a hazy mess. So anybody that at that time that was doing high-end quality polishing was doing rotary. Now, it did transition, and we did learn through trial and error and discovery of things that existed we didn't know, microfiber, that you could really ramp up the capability of that machine. And in fact, I remember when Jason Rose was working on a new state-of-the-art compound when he was at Meguiar's, we were doing testing ourselves on the highest end vehicle we'd been working on, which was the Alpine imprint hand-built Mercedes-Benzes, where they had these sharp razor edges on this beautiful candy-colored car. And we had the honor of polishing all those edges that were long blocked with 800 grit. So the painters did a wonderful job in blocking out the body and shaping it and painting it and long block sanding it and then rotoring almost to the edges, but not quite. So we happened to be, Jason was in the midst of heading up an R&D program for Meguiar's, and we were utilizing microfiber discs with a prototype compound and just knocking it out of the park. I mean, dropping the machine down there with microfiber and a prototype compound and just annihilating the 800 grit.
And this is all with 8mm throw?
Yep.
Yeah. Now, we also at the time, because it was 8mm, we still needed more cutting ability than the 8mm could deliver at the time. So we would bump the speed up, the RPM of the motor, because I was trying to get myself maximum random rotation to help the cut. And in fact, we were getting 10 to 12 rotations per second. Well, that's 700 RPM. So, in that range, it varies, but you could do the math at 720 RPM. But you add that RPM capability with the orbit action and microfiber and a super micro abrasive compound, and that's how we were able to get that work done. Problem is, it wasn't balanced. The backing plate wasn't balanced, or wasn't really made for that microfiber. Well, it was, but the duo was not weighted for that machine. So consequently, after some time, your arms and palms start to get numb from vibration.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be devastating in the long run to try and do those things. So matter of fact, I really was against. I really didn't like the microfiber pad when it first came out. The one that we had, I thought it was a joke. I truly did. I thought, this is the cheapest looking garbage. What is this? And then, so Jason had me test it for him. So after a period of about 8 hours a day on a brand new Cadillac, I called Jason. I remember, I don't think he will, but I said, hey, can you make some knee pads with Velcro backing? He's like, what are you talking about? I said, well, what am I going to do with all these foam pads I have? I'm never going to be able to sell them again. This thing just destroys everything I said, I'm kind of bummed out because I spent, at the time, 15 years of my life just becoming good with a rotary instead of trying to learn how to make money, which is what your class is about. And I just surpassed that with this $2 looking pad and a random orbital. I mean, it was just blow you away performance. So the transition from going from rotary to random orbital, there was a long lull, but it was almost instant. It was almost overnight, that because of the compound technology and the discovery of this microfiber disc that Meguiar's had for years, but in another industry, wow, it was lightning bolts. I mean, it was incredible, right, Jason?
Two questions. Yeah. First one, what was the other industry this was used for?
OEM.
It was used,
OEM manufacturing.
Car factories.
Yeah.
Well, you think it would be a logical transition to detailing.
Yeah, you would think.
Okay.
Yeah.
The second one was,
we just didn't know about it. Yeah.
What made it look so bad to you? Was it the fact that it's just different than a foam pad, or was it like the prototype, like horrific looking?
Well, that original one didn't use a traditional foam, right, Jason?
Right. It was a different material, so it actually kind of looked like neoprene, like a wetsuit material.
Yeah.
And then it had this, fuzzy fabric on it. So yeah, it didn't look very sexy at all.
You know what? I think I know exactly what you're talking about. I think I may even have used. Did those ever come out or anything? Or I think I know.
No.
I feel like I know what you're talking about. Very wetsuity looking on the top.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. All right,
well, Jason continued on the program with the team at Meguiar's to develop this system. But in the meantime, I couldn't talk about it, of course, non-disclosure agreements. And of course, why would you let the cat out of the bag? But I really wanted to understand, why is this working so well compared to foam? So that was the onset of really truly not being emotional about which machine or pad am I using, because I'm used to a rotary and I'm very good with one. I mean, I was exceptionally good with one, still am. But at some point, if you're going to learn, you're going to diagnose and eventually teach, then you have to become unemotional. You have to become not objective, like I prefer this. You have to become
agnostic. Agnostic.
You know what I mean? You have to really put it all on the shelf, say, okay, what's really happening here? Forget what I like, what's happening, so you can learn. And we did. We learned a tremendous amount in that period. Mm-hmm. Most of my learning came from being around Jason and his R&D staff and developing that pad, and me trying to deduce, like, why is that working so well? And I'd have to say, well, I can't talk about this, but I could, now that I've figured out why it might be working well, I can talk about how to maximize the capability of a foam pad, pressure, cut the backing plate tighter to the diameters, a lot of things like
Yeah.
that. But what was really interesting was I used that prototype design almost exclusively, without exaggeration, for maybe 800 to 1,000 hours. I just started using that only to compound and finish. And my finishing work was with a compound, and it was better than anything I could ever
Yeah.
do with a rotary at the time. Um, but I became emotionally attached to that pad. So when Jason was trying to make the pad more comfortable, last longer, increase the diameter, I didn't like the idea at all. But regardless, there was a day where we went to our top secret testing, our Area 805, we called it, which was Jesse's stereo shop, right? And Jason had 6 pads. He had the original pad and 5 other pads that he developed. And so I taped the hood, and I was the guy that was going to test it all. And we were going to break it down into categories. Which one was the most comfortable? Which one cut the best? Which one finished the best? And all these different categories. So I was tasked by Jason to hold the machine a certain way and back and forth at the right speed, and don't do more passes or less for any other one. And then we were to rank that as honestly as we could. And so some time went by because I had finished my testing, but Jason, as usual, was on the phone for an hour, and so I kind of forgot which was
I don't
which.
do that.
Zing!
Yeah, he's very busy on the phone. But in the end of it all, our ranking was the one I ranked first place, Jason ranked second. And the one that Jason ranked first, I ranked second. So we were very close in the design. My favorite pad that I thought could not be beat ranked number 6, honestly. So the advancement of the ability to keep the performance of that original one, yet further improve on it and give it more comfort, and I could drop the speed. It was a huge advancement of that technology. By the time that launched, everybody knows that pad system is still an industry standard. Like if you're going to try microfiber or you want to compete against it, you're still going to put that product in the lineup. You have to. It was that well researched.
And the advancements of that pad from 6 to 1 in this example here, did that minimize the DA vibration? Was that like one of the criteria that you were trying to? Because I'm trying to figure out the transition from the 8mm DA to the 15 to the 21. Was it just a natural progression, or was it like, hey, we can't figure out that the pad itself is making this 8mm Porter cable or whatever the heck you were using at that point jiggle too much?
Well, let me answer that one, because the introduction of the 21mm large orbit, DA polisher, that was a completely independent happening.
Nothing to do with detailing.
There's no linear progression between
really
the work that Kevin and I were doing on 8mm tools with microfiber and specialized compounds for DA. All of that work we were doing completely isolated from.
Completely.
But it's going in parallel, or no?
Well, in Europe, it was happening in Europe. So just so you know, the Bigfoot 21 electric polisher, that is born out of a pneumatic tool that got very popular in body shops in Europe. It was a 10mm, which was larger orbit than
the 8,
but it was a 10mm pneumatic tool, an air tool.
Sure,
that was used in Europe, and it got so much success because it was a way for body shops to finish cars with an alternative to rotary, because rotary was hard to finish without leaving that swirl mark.
Sure.
So this new DA tool with a larger orbit, they were able to buzz over it after they finished sanding and polishing a car, and it would leave no swirl marks.
And that was with a Palm? Was Palm 10?
It was a single, well, you could hold it with 2 hands, but it's a single-handed pneumatic big orbit polisher. Big meaning 10mm. That is how the 21 and the 15 was born. Is Rupus Italy was deciding, okay, maybe there's something to this big orbit thing.
From the 8 to the 10, like, oh my gosh, what if we went from 10
Yeah.
to 15? That's the progression.
Well,
Exactly right.
And then to be fair to the other machines of large stroke, the Cyclo, what is that, 16 millimeter twin head?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. That was a large stroke, but didn't have the RPM or the capability, didn't have any adjustment. So it had limited, it had the component that was needed. Had it went to one head or had it went variable speed faster, things like that. The other one is the Dynabrade dual action buffing head, which was made to bolt directly onto a rotary polisher. And Jason and I remember Michael Stoops were there at the training because we wanted to try the McGuire's branded random orbital, and so we had it there, of course, and we had a Flex 3401, which I'd never used at the time, and I had this Dynabrade dual action buffing head, and I remember using
and that would go on a rotary. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Correct. Yeah.
It's 3/4. It's 19.4 millimeters.
So you put this head, basically, for those who don't know, you put this head on a regular everyday rotary, and it would mimic the throw. What was the throw at that point? What was the
3/4 inch?
So
3/4 inch.
3/4 inch, which is equivalent to 19 millimeter
orbit diameter. So yeah.
So even then, because I've used those before,
19.4 millimeter. It was large stroke.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And you could get maybe 3,000 to 3,200 RPM delivered to it because that's what a rotary topped out at. So you didn't have even the RPM that a 21 had it when it was first introduced at 4,200, but you still had a very capable product, and it was touted by Dynabrade, usually with wool. Even it came with a wool pad.
That's crazy.
And one of theirs was random orbital only, but one was switchable, so you could lock it back.
I had that one. You could go back and forth to rotary to the.
Yeah. Regardless, I tried the 3401 and I just didn't enjoy it. I've been so used to a rotary. Again, where did you come from, right? If you started with a rotary and got used to that, became exceptionally good with it, and you're looking at hundreds of hours or maybe thousands of the rotation going one way, and then you pick up another machine and it goes the opposite, right away you're thinking, what? You couldn't figure out how to do this the right way. So I was off put by that, but it certainly had a purpose and it was very popular. But when I did the 3401 on my Buffmaster, DeWalt Buffmaster rotary, when I did the dual action buffing head on the rotary, what I saw I didn't understand. And Mike Stoops, I remember him too. He did the same thing. We both were just stunned that it finished so well. I mean, it obviously cut, but it's like, what happened here? How did this happen? And that, for me, was where I started, researching what's the difference in short and large? Again, trying to not be emotionally attached to anything, just to be analytical. And after hundreds of hours, for me, it became clear that if you could use a large stroke in the area reasonably, there's a lot of advantages to that. So,
in parallel, just to kind of keep the timeline going, you two are doing this. Jason's at McGuire's. You're playing with the Dynabrade. Oh my gosh, I still have my rotary, but we're going to try to figure out how we can get 19 millimeter. We saw Rupes is in the background in Europe going 8 to 10. Oh my gosh, this totally makes sense. Wait a second, light bulb. What if we went even more than 10? Could it be better or worse or whatever? So all that stuff's going on. What was the transition? I know a little bit of the story. So at this point in time, I don't know where we are, late 1999, 90s, 2000. I don't know where.
You're probably in the era of 2000, and I think 2008 is when 105 was launched, and we were right in the midst of in that realm.
All right, so like 2000.
I was already writing an article.
2007, 2008. Now, in your mind, Kevin, you're going, damn, if we could find something in the detailing world, because I went from rotary to DA and the 8, and we did the microfiber, we can actually do it. And like, I'm thinking you're progressing further and further away from your main club, which was a rotary at that point. So you're progressing further and further away. And so I want to understand the moment where you were like, if we could make a 15 or 18 or 19 and a half, or like, I'm sure at that point you didn't think 15 and 21, but whatever it was, bigger throw. And then when did you discover in parallel the lines actually crossed? Were like, I know the stories to some degree. You went to SEMA and you were like, oh my God, what?
Well, yeah. And again, one thing I learned from Jason was when he was are doing R&D, he discovered some paperwork about sanding, and in the paperwork it flat out stated that they recommended initially to use a large stroke palm sander versus a short. Um, and it was unusually large for the body shops at the time. Most of them had 3/32 or 3/16 stroke, and then some had 5/16. But my gosh, that was a large throw for a palm sander. But they doubled that. They recommended, I believe, 3/8 in the
That's
paperwork
five
and
eighths.
5/8. So
5/8.
there was already data from other companies that indicated a superior cut or finish or both result with a large stroke. So by just researching and believing that somebody, you know, that wrote that knew what they were talking about, I just started writing an article about trying to understand large stroke. I didn't ever beg anybody to do one, and I never had seen. If I'd seen Rupes, I don't recall it. So when I was walking down the hall, I had spent roughly 6 to 7 months of nights writing this article about large stroke, and then it was 6 or 7 months later that I saw the 21 on the head of that machine at SEMA and said, "Wait, does what is that? Does that 21 millimeter mean 21 millimeter orbit?" And Marco says, "Yes." I'm like, it was like my mind was blown. I had no idea somebody built it. Again, keep in mind, I knew that there was the Dynabrade dual action buffing head.
Yeah.
I also thought they were having no idea, having no connection. At one point, those were $120 or $130 a piece, and they went down to like $58. So I told everybody online back then we had forums like, "This is cheaper than dealer cost. You should buy one." So I don't know if they unloaded their warehouse or not, but they sold a lot of those dual action buffing heads because of that price. I thought they're coming out with a new one that's maybe smaller.
Nah, there's insider trading with the Italians. That's what happened. There was one guy that walked through the factory at Rupes and was like, "Oh crap, get rid of these things. Sell, sell, sell."
Well, there's a history there too of lineage of people that used to work at one company and another. But the point is no, I didn't have any plans. I wasn't begging that I can recall. I did remember begging. I remember going to the year before or the prior year and visiting the Cyclo booth, and the owner was there, and I asked him, I need a big favor. I need you to make a single head large stroke. Take your stroke, take a head off, make it out of plastic, give it a 3-year warranty, American made, large stroke. And he's like, "Do you have any idea what you're talking about in terms of tooling?" Well, he didn't know who I was, but that's the closest I got to thinking somebody needs to make this. And lo and behold, they'd already had them. They were already built. I just didn't even know. They were already built very likely when I was writing my article.
When was the first time you actually put your hands on a 21? Like, what was the first
2011.
time? 2011. Where was it? At SEMA?
SEMA.
Yeah.
And like you just pulled the trigger there and were like, "Holy cow, this is insane."
No, it wasn't even a 110 volt. I had to wait almost a year. They didn't even have a 110 volt machine there, right, Jason? If you remember, they must have had it.
What did they show then?
Converted.
He was running. He did a demo, but I think he ran it through a converter.
Yeah.
Oh, he had the, what is it, 140
He had an
or
electric converter.
Yeah.
It's 230 volt tool.
230.
So
Wow.
what I want people to know, maybe this is transitioning too early, but I want people to understand when they come to your master class, you're dealing with someone like me that just wanted to understand this because I loved polishing. I didn't, like we talked about before, it wasn't about the money. It was about the procedure and going to the highest level, right? That's what I built myself for. I mean, that's what I wanted to do, to be the best there could be. And certainly there are people better than me, and congratulations, because that's a lot of work. Technology's advanced to the point where it makes that easier. Random orbital can equal or surpass what you can put out with a rotary. No doubt about it. But doesn't mean that the rotary is outdated. But again, when you come to this training, you're dealing with someone like me that's invested a large part of his life into understanding the dynamics of motion, speed, pads and all that in me. And look at Jason, same thing. I learned a lot of how to analyze, and some of the things that were discovered I learned through Jason, right? So we've been side by side interested in where the pad meets the paint, what's really happening. And that's the kind of information you'll be able to get there. So, and we can fast track that by saying, hey, this pad works better with this machine. If you want to know why, I can tell you, because I got 12 hours invested in just thinking about it and probably 100 using it. But you can, or you could take our advice and try it this way.
Yeah.
You'll get a lot of that built in, which is experience, right?
That's why I was so excited.
It was a very mutual thing during that time, during the creation of that microfiber correction system. And then when the Bigfoot 21 came on the scene and we started to get that in our hands, I just remember lots and lots of conversations, Kevin and I talking about stuff. And you begin to think about things in a different way through this conversation between the two of us, because there are things like fluid dynamics, residue management, and abrasive behavior, and that's not talking about a person.
Just find out, yeah.
But the behavior of abrasives.
Right.
I mean, these are the kind of things that Kevin and I would talk about, and it opened my eyes to a lot of things. Our conversations would really open my eyes to, oh my gosh, what if? And then I would go try something else in a formula and come back. And it was very much a mutual thing. Kevin saying it was him learning from me, but it was us learning from each other.
That's why I'm super excited to do what we're doing, which is, of course, what I called the masterclass. Not just to have yet another training, because obviously we've known each other for how many years, and this is the first time that we're doing this kind of thing together. So it wasn't like maybe it just wasn't right before or whatever, but I wanted to be able to capture exactly what you're talking about as the third wheel or the third leg or whatever you want to call it, that can then encompass the business side of that, as well as emphasize the parts of your education that would help people, not just like, here's how you do step 1, step 2, step 3. I'm very anti that. It's more like, I'm going to teach you how to think about things, and maybe you can just go to step 3. Maybe you don't need 1 and 2. I don't know. Maybe you just need 2. So I'm so fascinated about talking to experts, meaning the both of you, and understanding the core fundamentals of how to build this building, bake this cake the way that you think about it. Because I think what most people don't appreciate, and to some degree I don't as well sometimes, is the people with the knowledge and the experience, and they've gone through the war. I can read all the books I want. I can watch all the freaking war movies, but that dude went through the war. It is a different way of, like, he can teach you things and look in his eyes that you're not going to get from the book or the movie. And so
Kevin, he just called us both old.
And in the Civil War,
call me old all you want.
Yeah. You're not going to get experience with two guys that have been through the Civil War. You see what I did there? So the point I'm trying to make is
called us older now.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't say World War II. I said Civil War. So that's where I became really obsessed. And you guys remember years ago we did this podcast, or it was at one of your NXT. Maybe it was a podcast at your NXT. I don't remember. But I asked this question, and I'm going to mess it up again. I'm paraphrasing it. But the question I asked was, if you, Kevin and Jason, had to prepare a vehicle for Pebble Beach in one day, okay? In that one day, you had to do it with a partner that wasn't Kevin or Jason. So Kevin had to do it with somebody else, Jason had to do it with somebody else. And that one person has never detailed the car in their entire life. And you had 5 hours, I'm making that number up, to teach them everything you needed to know to be able to do that Pebble Beach car. Are you going to be able to teach them everything? Of course not. That's the point of the exercise. What would you teach them that would get them up to 80 to 90% in the fastest period possible? What is the core fundamentals? What is not all the stuff that you see on the internet and the confusion and the this and that? Like, what is the bare minimum? And another analogy I use is, I think the real life superheroes in this world, I'm not even joking about this, are the Navy SEALs, or the people who train at that level, who have sacrificed and donated all the time to be able to do the things that we don't even know what the hell they're doing. But the gift that they have is not their strength and their muscle and their stamina and their shooting and all that other stuff. That's not the gift that they have. They're already super freaks about that. We all get that. Their superpower is to be able to learn, understand, digest, and then execute things at a level that most people can't. So if they need to fly this helicopter to get out of danger, it may not be pretty, but they're going to get out of that, whatever it is. If they need to learn how to build a bridge to get a, so, and insert example. So I get fascinated by how people can process that information and immediately utilize that. Yeah, they're not going to be a fighter pilot in 5 minutes. I get it, but they're going to get the hell out of the situation. And so that understanding and the way that their brain works is what motivates me to do this type of training. I know that's a weird way of saying that, but to be able to suck the information out of both of you, digest it,
Right.
and make it so that people can use it as a ladder that actually gets them somewhere to actually change their life in terms of profitability and whatever it is that they're trying to achieve. To me, that is the morsel. That's what encapsulates everything that I've been trying to do with this masterclass, and why we could have done it 15 years, whatever we met, X amount of years ago, right? Things didn't work out. So it's not that they didn't work out. It's just they didn't align the right way. And I think my brain wasn't there or whatever. But so when people ask, what is this really about? It's not like, hey, come here and we're going to show you how to sand a car. And step 1 is going to be this. And step 2, I think there's so much more to the information that you get that's outside of, here's the difference between a 15 and a 21 or you get what I'm saying?
And that's what I'm really excited about this particular event, because of what you're saying, and that it actually is offering 2 sides of this. One is, and if I look back in history over paint correction and paint polishing over decades, and Kevin and I, not quite Civil War, but we go way back.
When he had hair, got it.
Paint polishing. And I think Kevin will agree with me on this statement, that there's technology available to detailers today, or to people polishing paint today, that we didn't have when we started, certainly. But there's amazing efficiencies that could be gained by the current tech stuff available now.
Right.
But what I like about your class that you've created here is we're going to teach you those efficiencies. You're going to learn how to get this stuff done better and faster.
Like peak performance.
Yeah, peak performance, but efficient. Get it done efficiently. Get it done faster. You're going to understand the why. We're going to have lots of talks about why. Why this, why that, why are we doing it this way? But in parallel to that, you also get a heavy dose of profitability. So the efficiencies gained in paint correction can translate directly to, it's not a dotted line, it's a direct line to profitability.
Right.
Which is all the messaging you're going to have on the business side.
Correct.
And that's the part, people that come to the Rupus Academy, they're going to get a class. They're going to get a class on sanding and polishing, but they're not going to get this class. This class with us 3 is going to be totally different than anything that's happened at this academy.
Yeah, I think melding the two of, you can be the world's greatest paint polisher, but that doesn't mean you're going to be profitable. And
Right.
that concept, I love chewing on that. So there's a saying that says, if you want to be successful in business, then you should probably practice business and learn business skills. You should have the requisite business skills to be. Yeah. It's very logical. I'm not even being joking about that, but most people are like, yeah, I want to be a successful business. It's like, well, pick one. I'm going to be a detailer. I'm going to be a baker or whatever. I don't care the business, but there's fundamentals that you need to know to be able to operate that business in a profitable way. Because and then ultimately, we're just cleaning our cars in the driveway. Then that's really what's happening here. If you're not making money, so. The combination of you two and the experience, and then trying to meld all of that with how do we build that profitably and have people not have the guilt. I had a lot of people be like, but I can't charge them like that much. And I was like, you realize that's against, you are the CEO of your company, and your technical definition is the CEO's job is to increase the wealth of the shareholders. In this case, because you have actually running a business, and people, I can go for hours on this, a business that's $500 million, $1 billion company, and your company that makes $100,000 is pretty equivalent in the eyes of the IRS to some degree, and there's corporations and different things, right? I'm saying for the purpose of this conversation, your goal is the same thing. It's to be profitable. That's the idea. That's what the business is for. And so people have a lot of this hurdle where they're just like, I'm so focused on like how much pad pressure I should put down and what liquid I should use. I'm like, that's amazing. You should. I would rather learn that too. And they spend a wildly disproportionate time on that than they do on the stuff that's like really hard, which is this.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's especially if somebody's entered into the professional detailing business within the last 5 years.
It's crazy.
And then there's another group that's entered in within the last 10 years. But within the last 5 years, I get people in my class here where they're like, oh, this is awesome. I learned how to take 3 steps of a process and get it down to 1,
Right.
sometimes 2. And they're really excited. And then I want to slap them with the next statement they make, which is, and I can lower my prices.
Yeah.
And like, I actually had this in my class last week. Somebody said, I'm so excited about learning this now because now I can compete with the other detailers in my market at a lower price.
I'm gonna get crazy if you keep talking like this. I'm gonna lose my mind and like I'm bouncing.
Race to the bottom, right?
Right. Like you ever have like a mechanic? You know what's interesting about mechanics? We're gonna have to stop after this because I'm gonna lose my mind. But you have a mechanic, right? Kevin, you probably know the name of the book, but there's a book that they have that it says like to change a water pump. I'm picking this out. I have no idea. To change a water pump on a Ford F-150 is 2.3 hours, and at our rate of $150.
Time, right?
Whatever that book is called, right? Where do they make the money? They make the money because someone like Kevin and Jason, who've been doing water pumps for 100 years, know that it takes them 30 minutes. I'm making that up, right? Because they've done it 1,000 times. They've done it. They know the thing. They know that they don't do too much on this one, that one, whatever the trick is. But they still get charged. They still charge the guy 2.5 because that's what the book said. That's how long an average time it takes to do that. And so when I shake the person, I'm like, you knucklehead, you don't give them you know what you're doing now. That's why I can do a car in a day that takes 7 others, X amount of, you see what I'm saying? So that part, so I'm breathing.
Well, I want to be clear. Obviously, I've got a lot of experience in detailing, polishing, theory, some trainings. I talk on the phone almost every day about paint issues or recommendations. Jason's been teaching at the highest level that we have in our industry around the world for well over a decade. So that's a given that you're going to get a high caliber of information regarding sanding and polishing paint. But we also have other classes that are available that offer this, and they also offer a one-day business class. And so you see that is kind of become the run-of-the-mill. I'm seeing a lot of competition, but what do you think, Larry, is you've spent, I don't know how many hundreds of hours doing your ATA, Ammo Training Academy 300, and within that ATA series is approximately how many hours of watching time you could watch just information about business?
90 plus hours.
90 plus hours. And some of that is about paint polishing and
common
marketing.
Mistakes. It's less about like step 1, step 2, step 3. It's more of like, I don't want to call it a hack because it's not a hack. That's not the right word. But I love going right to the expert. And if you listen to an expert, pick a sport, whatever it is. Anything that they're an expert in, and you figure out the thing that you can avoid the easiest. Do you know by default, you're already ahead of everybody? So the example I give is if you were walking through this trail in the jungle and you can't see anything, meaning you're ignorant to whatever this sport is, whatever this thing is, and you're ignorant and you have to chop down the trees to get in and you're trying to learn. But the guy in front of you who's chopped down the trees 1,000 times says, hey, in 15 steps, there's a massive hole. I need you to go around that hole and then keep going. You're like, okay, cool. 1, 2, 14. Okay, I stop at 14. I go around the hole and I keep walking. And people are like, yeah, okay, it makes sense. But if you really think about it, what you've just done is prevented yourself from going in a hole. And you're like, okay, I got it. Prevented yourself from getting out of that hole and getting back up and moving on the path again. All pretty basic things. But conceptually, by listening to that person, you are already 15 steps ahead of your competition or wherever you would have been just by avoiding mistakes. Not necessarily, I don't want to fall in the hole and learn how to get out of it necessarily all the time. The expert told me where it is. You're already 15 times better if you just avoid the mistakes. So the answer that I'm giving you is it's just not, I'm not, this ATA 300, the online course, and coming to this is not just here's how you polish paint. Like, I would feel like a failure if everybody left and said, like, now I know step 1, step 2, step 3. It's like, no. You have to understand the ingredients before you can actually bake the cake, so that you can take one of those ingredients out if you want to change the flavor. It's like, so it's more, so the difference I see is, granted, I also haven't gone to every single person's training, so I can't speak about that. And I want to make sure that, I'm sure there's wonderful training everywhere. But the part that I'm really fastidious and tenacious about is understanding all the points that if done alone, you are already miles ahead of everybody else. Because why do I want to get punched in the face? Why do I want to fall in a hole? The guy told me not to go there. And if you just accumulate all those, get out of this hole, avoid this hole, you learn so much faster. I don't want to have the pain of going through that. I mean, yes, sometimes it's, everybody's has a plan until they get punched in the face, the whole Mike Tyson thing. Like, I get that. There's part of a growing in that. But when it comes to detailing and profitability, if I just remember what the experts say, like, I'm already that much. I don't want to take 10 years to figure it out. That's 10 years loss of profit. So I can go on for hours, but that's what I think is different.
I agree with what you're saying too. And it's part of the motivation why I've spent my career educating people, because there was a learning curve when I had a 12-year detailing business. Kevin had, I don't know how many years detailing business. And Kevin and I, we didn't learn detailing together. We learned separately, but there was a learning curve. We learned how to detail cars, and it was a very different learning curve than it is for a detailer today.
Correct. And you can take advantage of that. So one of the fun things that they say, like, when people say, hey, you don't know what you don't know, that's like a phrase that I want to, like, jump through the thing and choke somebody. It's like, what's interesting today is that there's pretty much, for the sake of this conversation, there's pretty much everything that you need or want to know on the internet. Not like what's the purpose of life and the meaning of life. I'm saying like a real thing. Like, how do you rewire a whatever? How do you open up a bank account? Whatever. It's all there. And the thing is, people can access it pretty easily now. We know what the right thing to do is. The interesting thing, what's so amazing, because I'm guilty of it and everybody else is even though we know what the right thing to do is, doesn't mean we do it. That's what's fascinating to me. I'm going to use something a little more controversial. We all know that smoking cigarettes is not beneficial for your health. Is anyone going to argue that it's bad for your health, it's even, or it's good for your health? We all can say it's probably not good for your health, right? We all kind of get that. But people still continue to smoke, right? And you go like, oh, because it's a choice. They know the answer. So in this case, I think there's so much information out there that it's hard to say, like, I didn't know how to not, you don't know what you don't know. It's like, no, it's all there. Everything is there. It's just whether you choose to use it or not. And so all those little anecdotes I'm giving is how I'm trying to build the masterclass, which, by the way, we can talk about that. It's not a masterclass. You don't need to be a master. You can be a beginner. We'll talk more about that. But that's how I'm trying to frame it. So it's so much more interesting. So when they leave, they go like, okay, like, I have this little playbook in my head of how I can be interpreting things in terms of profitability. How do I filter out a customer, even though this guy rolls in with a huge gold chain and a bunch of Ferraris and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, I can show you that's not somebody you want in this random example, right? Like, even though he's got all this money, but he's going to be a nightmare for you. Here's how I can tell you when in 2 seconds to filter out this customer. Things like that to kind of navigate the world.
That's why I think where it's being held at the Rupes headquarters, with Jason Rose heading the class, the instructor of the physical motions of polishing and sanding, etc. That's important. My background's important, but I think the most important part of the class is having access to your information about business. You're giving them the tools through us on how to actually accomplish one of the most difficult aspects of detailing, which is how to handle the paint properly. But the biggest prize in the whole class is going to have the access to the things that you've gone through and you have proven by building your brand and identity that they actually work. So this is extremely rare, not because it's well, it is rare because it's the three of us.
Yeah, we haven't done this ever. So yeah.
But
Yeah.
the duel that is, I don't want you to overlook it or just say, oh, by the way, I'm going to be teaching the ins and outs of how to run business and make money. That is the purpose. This is why this is an Ammo Trading Academy titled event. And that's why we are both looking so forward to working with you, because, well, we haven't worked together in a while, and I'm looking forward to doing the training there. And Jason already has all the hard work done, so I basically get to show up and do what I love to do. But the rarity of the event is the trio of us, but the information that you are willing to share for the first time in mass, other than
I agree.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I think it's going to be amazing, of course, but I want to be clear that I guess I shouldn't have named it Masterclass, because we're going to read a bunch of questions now that basically say, I'm not a master. Can I come to this class? And I was like,
yeah, that's fine.
My bad. All right. So on that note, Naveed, hey, what's going on, Naveed? He says, hi, Larry. I'm new to paint correction. Given that I'm less experienced, do you guys have any suggestions on things I should practice before I show up to the training? How can I prepare to get the most out of the masterclass? Thanks so much. Look forward to seeing you. So with that being said, I know what to do from my side, but I'll ask you guys first. What's a good thing? Because when I read a book, I'm going to give it, me and my analogies. I read a book, I don't really know what the heck is going on in the book until I read it like the seventh time. So I'm a lunatic about reading books. I don't go through a lot of them because I don't absorb that well. I have to go through it a bunch of times. Why am I saying that? I'm saying that because before they get here, how do they stretch before they exercise? How do they prepare for you?
I have an answer, but do you have one, Kevin?
After yours.
So my suggestion, sorry, what was his name again?
Naveed.
So I would say don't practice.
Have an open mind? Is that what you're going for?
Yes, I would say come into the event prepared to be open, prepared to learn some procedures, definitely learn some why are products the way they are, why are procedures the way they are. You're going to learn the why. And the reason I say don't practice is because at this moment, I don't know about this individual's current technique and how they do their polishing. And you could be practicing over and over and over the wrong thing.
Yeah, further ingrained in the wrong rut.
Yeah. So I would say don't practice. Unless you want to practice just to have more confidence, because going in with more confidence is a great thing. But that would be my advice, is just come in with an open mind and be prepared to learn some crazy new stuff.
Kevin?
And I would say that if you already have, I don't know what machines he has available, but I would certainly say get used to what that feels like, so that when if you do have a random orbital polisher, run that. And when maybe he's already comfortable using one, but maybe he has access to a rotary that he's never tried and doesn't know what it's going to feel like. So I'd rather have him at least run through the paces of the machines, so that that's not the biggest, wow, this is so neat, or wow, I didn't know it was like this. Get over that hurdle of knowing what that.
So we can have some questions too. Like, this didn't feel right. Yeah. Like, what about this or that or that? So I can see both. Yeah, I think don't get, I wouldn't basically I'm saying to Naveed, I wouldn't overthink it too much. I'm going from the more practical side. I think you need to sleep a whole lot. I think you need to be fully prepared from that side, because you're shortchanging yourself if you're, quite frankly, tired, or you haven't eaten well, or you're some sort of stress. Like, cause I know from my side, when you guys are out doing your thing and I'm in the classroom, I'm blasting. Like I'm hitting you with like a bazooka. Forget about the fire hose. And we have a lot of information. So you need to have your stuff together.
Your information's not out and about except for in the ATA 300. I would encourage someone to watch the ATA 200 series. That's
correct.
Free.
That was my next thing.
Okay. Because familiarity can help redirect your real questions. Like if we talk about the difference in foam and microfiber and wool, well, great. If that's brand new to you, that's a lot to wrap your head around. instead, I'd rather that somebody had those, or if they already had them, and use them, and they have their own questions like, why do I get chattering and bouncing and hopping with this microfiber, but I don't get it with foam? Or why doesn't the foam cut as well? Or, I think that if you have the tools and equipment and you can utilize those and make a list of like, I want to know why this happens, or I want to know why I'm not getting the performance when I do that, it will help you guide your questioning if there is that time to do so. But of course, you could watch hours and hours and hours of different videos. Jason's got a lot of information on there too, but just do what's comfortable. If you can prepare ahead and at least come up with a short list of questions that no matter what you watch or no matter what you've worked on, you still can't come up with the answer, then I think you're better prepared to be very specific with your questioning.
Yeah. So. I as you can see right now, can you guys see this on screen or no?
Yeah.
Yeah. So on screen right now, I'm just showing a random, I don't even remember what episode this is, to be honest with you, but I think, different types of machines. And of course, DA, the point being, this is ATA 200, which is public and it's been up for X amount of years. I would say that's not a terrible idea. Maybe download it and watch it on the plane or whatever the case may be. But we're going to be going over a lot of advancements to this. And I think having a little bit of knowledge of that beforehand. So when Jason says something about a 15 to a 21, you're not going like, what 15 to 21 what kind of thing. You know what I mean? You're at least have some knowledge there. All right, I'm going to go. We got 3 more questions. I do appreciate you guys hanging in there. Brody. Hey, Larry, I'm traveling all the way from Australia for this class. I'm really excited to meet everyone. What type of hands-on training can I expect? I'm looking to improve my specialty services and charge more for show cars and exotic vehicles. So obviously there's going to be some overlap to questions here, but hands-on training, what can I expect? So that's I'll throw that to you in terms of Jason. Hands-on training.
Well, the topics that we've selected, we're going to be doing some sanding, some rotary, some random orbital, some edge work tools. Those are the primary 4 topics on paint. Right,
and I feel like those are the core fundamental building blocks that I always say. That's the meat and potatoes of, like, you understand how to manipulate those. In the term of the definition of manipulate, like you really understand how to bake that cake. You're going to be in a much better position to be profitable. I'm thinking from my perspective on that side. Kevin, do you have anything, or do you want me to go into my whole?
No, I'm going to. This class will be guided by Jason, and I'll support him because he has so much experience in fine-tuning the best way to teach someone at an efficient rate and for them to absorb it. And he's had so much feedback over the years of, hey, what
yes.
could I have done better, or what part did you have questions about, or I didn't cover or didn't explain. He has that information. So every class, I'm sure, has been fine-tuned based upon the feedback. And certainly we don't agree on everything. Which machine would I use in this situation or that? Why do you prefer the short stroke machine?
Don't give it all away. We have another podcast we're doing. It's the next podcast I just thought of is, how does Jason disagree with Kevin? That's a good one.
And to be clear, we haven't done it that many times.
Yeah.
So Jason will typically talk about a subject, and when he's done what he's when he's finished, he'll say, is there anything else you'd like to add? And that's like, okay, everything that guy just said, you can forget.
I cannot wait to do that podcast. I'm seriously going to ask you guys that.
Hey, I'm busy that day, by the way.
No, what I'm going to do, you see how I'm going to put me in the middle, and then you, Jason, I'm going to put you on one side, and then like I'll be in the middle and be like, okay, what? It's going to be great.
Well, when you get an argument with Jason, he'll say, well, I disagree with you, and let me tell you the 5 reasons why. So if you're going to disagree or come at it a different way, you'll get to hear both sides of the story, and it'll be a very fair discussion. And that's what it's really all about, is to say, well, what if this happens, or what if that? What have you learned, Jason? What have you learned, Kevin? What have you learned, Larry? And so there will be moments like that where all 3 are valid. Choose what works best for you or makes the most sense. That way you remember better.
Yeah, I like this question because it encapsulates so much of what I'm talking. Like, hands-on training is amazing. period. Next paragraph. But I want just as much. I'm dying to encourage, engage, and poke people that hands-on training is amazing. You know what's also amazing? Brains-on conversation about how to be profitable in the hands-on training. Because you can have all the hands-on training in the world, which is great, and be an unbelievable detailer, which you will be. But it means
and
nothing.
Completely fail in business.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the...
Yeah.
Like, you have the hardest slap shot. I'm a hockey player in the world, but I can't hit the net. But like, I can hit the ball a mile, but if the guy throws me a curveball, I can't hit any. It's like, then it's not.
And on the other side of that coin is the guy that never really was exceptionally good at whatever business he's in, but he's the most successful in town or in the county. Why? Well, that's the part where you got to learn. Why do they come to you? Why do they search you out? How do you get them to recommend you and want to come back to you, even though you may not be in the industry perceived as the best to them? It's either trustworthiness, honesty.
There's so much more than polishing perfect paint.
Yeah.
It's critical. It's the foundation. I agree. But there's all these nuances that are so sexy, or I don't even know what the right word is. There's so many little nuances that are so fun to talk about when you look at a customer. Like, I'm doing just as much brain power into, like, when they walk in, like, I'm sizing everything up and filtering it. Like, is this going to actually work? Is this person going to be profitable? They're going to drive me crazy? Or is this the best customer in the world? Like, I'm not thinking about necessarily the car at the first part. And so I just want people, at the bottom line is this, I want people as excited about the cool tools and how much pressure and making the perfect paint as they are about the boring task of reading a P&L, talking to your CPA. How do you have a bookkeeper? Do we have contracts, hold harmless? Do you have a non-disclosure? Do you have service contract? Like, so you see how, like, you guys get the fun part. You're like, yeah, we're going to polish paint, and this is going to be awesome. I'm like, okay, everybody put your glasses on, and let's look at a P&L. It's like,
what you've managed to do for the most of the time you've been in business as a one-person entity, or two at the most.
Yeah.
Is astounding. The backstory never told, but you are certainly one of the most successful detailers out there, let alone marketers of your brand.
Branding,
so,
branding, yeah.
Yeah, it's the big deal of this class. As much as Jason is well renowned, and I've spent a good majority of my life trying to learn how to teach this stuff, the jewel of the class is that part.
I think it's the melding of all of them together. We don't need to, bore the hell out of people, whatever. But I do appreciate that. I don't think it's one thing. I think it's the beauty of this is not being what do they call? It's not being a cook. It's about being a chef. A chef makes the menu. A cook just cooks the food, right? And to me, there's three blocks. If you're listening on the podcast, I'm looking at 3 blocks right now. Is how do we meld that in a way to make an actual beautiful meal in this metaphor? And so that all of those things are important. So yes, I appreciate what you're saying. Raymond, I've been asking for, I should probably read these before Raymond, I've been asking for this training for years. What is taking you so long? And of course I can't make it. Will you be holding more in the future? Damn.
Oh.
That's what the guy said.
Raymond, better change your schedule.
The answer, Raymond, you're the man. I do appreciate it. I don't really have an answer to that. To get all 3 of us in a room, I'm not even going to lie, it's very challenging. Jason is in the United States, no less, Denver, for 7 hours a year, and I've got him all. He's all over the place. In what country? Forget about the United States. Kevin, you got a lot of things on your plate, and then obviously I do more baseball now than I do anything else in my life. We have 2 doubleheaders this weekend, but I love my child. Anyways, so to get all of us in there is completely insane.
Yeah.
Challenge. It is a challenge. I got 2 more and then we're out of here. Thank you again, guys, for doing this. Carlos, hey Larry, this is an awesome idea. Do you plan to offer an introductory or beginner course in the future? I love watching ammo videos, but I'm not a professional. So this was the impetus behind me doing the masterclass kind of thing. This is, I actually think it's more geared towards beginners, in my opinion, because like Jason was saying.
Well, but the caveat I would add is, any skill level in paint polishing, beginner, intermediate, advanced, will take you whatever skill level you're at.
Mhm.
We're going to take you where you're at and make you better and faster. I guarantee you that. But I do think, and correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, but I think that this class, put the skill level and that scale aside for a second, but the class is kind of geared towards professional detailers, right? It's not really for the hobbyist.
I would say it's not necessarily for the hobbyists. We do have hobbyists coming. And I think what was most fascinating by me doing the ATA 300 and the people who are involved in that and the people who sign up for the class, there is a massive portion of people that have nothing to do with professional detailing. Is that the weirdest stat ever? I was like, wait, what do you do? And he's like, I'm a school teacher. And I was like, and he's like, well, part of my education for school teaching, in this particular example, really good guy, is to take continuing education. And I said, oh. And I said, you were doing this about business. And I said, and he said, yes. And I was like, what do you teach? And he's English or whatever it was. Like something that had nothing to do with business. He's a high school teacher. And he's like, I find this fascinating how you do what you do. I mean, detailing's fun. I've washed my car before, but I'm by no means like a crazy person about, you get what I'm saying? But the fact that you taught all these things about business is it's applicable everywhere. It doesn't, who cares about whether you're detailing a car? And I can insert Baker with respect to the business aspects of branding and filtering and so on and so forth. Maybe there's some parts that I say, stay away from car dealerships. Obviously, okay, maybe that's not relative to the baker, but maybe it's stay away from whatever the car dealership is in baking world. You get my point. So I think having that, it's more broad than people think that it's just for professionals. That's my response to that. That I think you walk away with things that you can use in anything in business from my side of the stuff that I'll be really focusing on.
Okay.
You see that? So that,
yeah.
But there's always the guy who's like, I love detailing my car on the weekend. And if I can be smarter than the next door neighbor and make my car cool and make some money on the side, like a side hustle, I have probably the majority of people in that, 15% of the people who are just like, I wanted to do this because I wanted to learn something new. And then the rest of the people who are pros. I thought it would be 100% pros. Kind of weird or interesting. Last question, Jay. Larry, I can't believe you're finally holding it in person. What took you so long? Thank you. I just detailed for fun on the weekends and do family, friends' cars here and there. Is this class primarily about polishing? So I think we've obviously beat a dead horse there. Like it's obviously not just about polishing. There's sanding, there's polishing.
Well, to be clear, I mean, as far as hands-on topics go, it is about paint and polishing, but
maybe he's asking about like interiors or something. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I didn't know if anybody's wondering. We're not going to be doing wheels and tires. We're not doing the engine compartment. We're not doing interiors. We're actually not going to spend time on proper washing. It is about polishing paint.
Then I stand corrected. That is a good question. I just went right over my head. We have a lot of videos. We should talk about this on another podcast because we're an hour and a half in and I know you guys have a bunch of stuff to do, but basically I'm going to be changing a whole lot of my, so I'm just prefacing it to the people. The irony is the people watching this and listening to this are the ones that would watch the stuff that I do anyways, but we're going to be changing a lot. It was really painful. This should be a whole other podcast that, YouTube's doing what YouTube's doing, which is essentially changing the entire game. It's really fascinating. Maybe we'll do it on another podcast and I'll show you the progression of how it's changed from, like the internet in the beginning was just like, you can't interact with the internet. You go to AOL, you read it, and you click off of it. And then, internet 2.0 was you can actually put things on the internet and then read it, and there's a communication thing. And then there was the next movement where now you can create fans and Instagrams and all this other stuff and build this following. Now it's changed to, fascinating enough, to this machine that's designed algorithmically to be pushing things that you don't necessarily want to see, but they are by definition more clickable so that the rates can go up in terms of advertising and whatnot. So if you want to watch things about detailing, you may not get that in your multiple feeds, TikTok, Instagram, blah, blah, blah. You're going to get what is considered via math algorithm to be more clickable than the thing that you would prefer to see. That is a massive shift in the world. Does that make sense, what I just said? How that, in terms, certainly from a creator perspective.
That's going from information that you are desiring to a guess of what would be entertaining to you, so you can click on it and watch it.
Said another way, you go home and you watch television. Boop. I put on the Discovery Channel. I just happen to like the Discovery Channel. And it's an amazing channel, and I want to watch this show on the Discovery Channel. The TV goes, no, this is what you're going to watch. And if you want to watch the Discovery Channel, I'm going to make it really hard for you. So you're going to watch a bunch of this stuff. And I'm like, I want to watch the Discovery Channel. And I go, and I'm like, oh, wait a second. That's a cool car.
Yeah.
Wait, what was I talking about? And then you forgot about the thing you wanted to watch. That's what's really happening. And it's so fascinating. What that's doing is destroying businesses in the process. I just opened up a huge can of worms. Okay, see you guys later. Thanks, bye. But that's essentially what's going on.
That grenade.
Yeah, exactly. But we can talk for hours about that. But I just created 2 podcasts. We're going to talk about that. Maybe I'll get Farrah on for that because he goes bananas on that one. And then I'm going to have another podcast you guys don't know where I'm going to split both of you up. I'll be in the middle of this 3-screen thing and say, what are the 3 things that you guys disagree about and why? Sounds amazing.
I'm busy that day.
Because Kevin's really good at arguing his point. It's great. This is great. Just to see you squirm is worth all of it. Anyhow, no, him.
Oh, no,
I'm pointing at the
squirmed.
screen like you can see. I'm pointing at Jason. You're a good arguer, Kevin. So whatever Kevin says, I agree because I don't want to get in an argument with that. I'll lose. All right. An hour and a half. That's the longest podcast ever. I do appreciate you guys being on. You can see my face. See how red I am? I'm actually sweating in here. All of a sudden it's getting hot. We're freezing cold. You getting snow, you said?
Yeah, we got snow this evening.
Yeah, and you don't count, Kevin, because you live in an island or whatever you
Right.
live. It's
always good.
Yeah, it's always good. I appreciate you guys being on. Anything else you can think of? Obviously, I'm excited to see you in the masterclass in the whatever we're calling it now, but the class that's not for masters, but made by 2 masters and one that wants to be.
Larry, has the class been made known to the general public? I mean, are you limiting that because you don't want to sell out all, and then anybody? Here's
the thought process. Thank you for asking that. The thought process was I originally did it on my Instagram, which ironically, do I need to say any more about the thing I just said? So I went to the Instagram to the 7 people that watch it now instead of the 8 million that are subscribed. Not really 8 million. You get my point, right? So I did it to my limited audience in between the other things that Instagram is shooting at them. And we had a bunch of people sign up. So we're rocking and rolling already. But I have to remember, it's not my facility. So I have to abide by certain rules, Rupes and respect for Jason and the whole thing. I can't have 700,000 people show up because then it defeats the purpose of what we're trying to train. So then we sent it out to a select group of people via email, got a bunch more people. We're easing it out. Why? The reason I'm less terrified about having fewer people than more people, because if I get to a point where it goes above being able to train a la what Jason is saying on this hands-on versus the first thing we talked about, the speech part, presentation, then I feel like a big jerk because people are like, dude, what the hell? Like I thought I could go to this. I'm like, so I don't want to be in that position to say no to someone that actually does want to come. So right now we still have some room, but we are quickly bouncing up against where I can't do that again. But maybe we do another class. So I'm not trying to prevent anybody from not doing it, but if we get so many, maybe we just do another class after that. So, but who knows? But right now we have plenty of people. It's great. We're not quite at the metaphorical limit, the comfortable limit, but so we can certainly use more people if that answers the question. Yeah. We have more room for people to have a wonderful, better, faster, smarter experience.
Yeah. Cool.
Make sense?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to it.
It's going to be a blast.
Both of you guys. It's going to be fun.
And when I can't believe I'm saying this. What are the dates again? Somebody remind me.
I don't keep those things in my head.
Oh, stop it. What do you keep in your head?
16th, 17th, and 18th of June, if I'm not mistaken, which is a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Nope. Stand by, please.
No, that's not it.
It's,
I'm going to yell down to Jordan real quick.
It is.
I thought it was 18, 19, 20.
It is the 19th.
That's what I said.
18th, 19th, 20th.
8, that's, see, I was right.
18th is a Tuesday, It's 18th, 19th, and 20th of June.
Both Kevin and me were completely off. It's great.
Hey,
18th, 19th, and 20th of June. I know we went like, and to schedule that was like 3 months worth of back and forth. No, I'm not here. I'm in Costa Rica and I'm in whatever. And, so 18th, 19th, and 20th, June, Denver. What's the name of the airport? All this stuff's in the email, but what is it? What's your name of your airport?
Denver International.
Denver International.
Yeah.
And then there's a list. Did Sarah put that up on the website yet? Like the link for all the, like on your Rupes website?
It's going up over the weekend.
All right, over the weekend. I also have my website.
Today, but over the weekend.
Yeah, over the weekend. If you're on Rupes, feel free to go there, click on the link. It'll probably send you to mine anyways, but mine's ammotrainingacademy.com. You can do that, or just shoot me an email, larry@ammonyc.com, or just show up to Jason's house and knock on the door, and he'll give you all the details, right?
I probably won't be there either.
You probably won't be there either.
You can try.
No. All right, guys. I spent, I burned enough of your day. I do appreciate it. Thanks for hopping on. Hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure you reach out, buffdaddy.com for all your buffing needs, right? And at some point, is your new website going up, sir? Do you see what I did there? I'm trying to push you.
Getting closer to starting.
Yes, we have a new website.
The old one, it works.
Yes. Go to the old one. It still works, but we are moving him to Shopify very soon, and it's going to be crazy. He's going to run everything on his phone. It's going to be nuts. And then jasonrose.com. Is that the website? No.
rupususa.com.
rupususa.com. And of course, AMMONYC. Thanks for listening. Drive carefully, detail profitably. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.